You have to take full responsibility for everything that you do.
6 6 money money power. 6 6 money money power.
I think this notion, and one of the things that you said that I think really resonates, is that there's not a voice out there that is advocating for responsibility, and that is talking about how important this is. And I think this is an inherent principle that most people are kind of aware of, and it feels good to them to hear. Like, it resonates. You feel it. When you're saying this, clean your room, put your house in order. People are like, yeah. How come I'm not hearing this?
Right.
How come I'm not hearing this?
Well, it's so funny because one of the things psychologists have done for the last 20 years, especially the social psychologists, is push this idea of self-esteem. You should feel good about yourself. And I think, why would you tell someone 20 that? It's like, you should feel good about who you are. It's like, no, you shouldn't. Why should you feel good about who you are? It's like, you should feel good about who you could be. That's way better because you got 60 years to turn into who you could be.
But wait a minute. Are you what your accomplishments are, or are you this individual going through this journey? I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with feeling good about who you are, as long as it's tempered by an understanding of potential and what you have accomplished versus what you can accomplish.
Well, I think
having confidence is a big part of
it. It is, and I'm not saying that people shouldn't have confidence, but like often you take young people, say they're 16 to 22, and they're not really feeling that good about who they are,
right?
Because their life is chaotic and in disorder, and they don't know where they're going, and they don't know which way is up.
Also, there could be bad parenting, bullying.
Oh, yes.
There could be a lot of abuse going on. And I think that's one of the reasons why that resonates with people, this idea of be happy about who you are.
Right.
Feel good about who you are.
Right. But the thing is, it has to be stated with precision. It's like,
yes.
It's like
with
you should treat yourself as if you're valuable, especially in potential. But you should concentrate on who you should become, especially if you're young. And so let's say you're miserable and nihilistic and chaotic and depressed and all of that now, and you have your reasons, terrible parenting, abuse, all of those things. It's like, well, you should feel good about yourself. It's like, no, it's not the right message. Is that it's more like you should understand how much potential there is within you to set that straight. And then you should do everything you can to manifest that in the world, and it will set it straight. And that's better than self-esteem. It's like, you're in a crooked, horrible position. Okay, fine. There's a lot of suffering and pain associated with that. Yeah, you can't just feel good about that because it's not good. But you can do something about it. You can genuinely do something about it. And I think all the evidence suggests that that's the case.
Yes.
So I'm telling young people, look, no matter how bad your situation is, I'm not going to pretend it's okay. It's not okay. It's tragic, tainted with malevolence. And some people really get hurt by malevolent people, like, terribly hurt. Sometimes they never recover. It's really awful. But there's more to you than you think. And if you stand up and face it with a positive, with a noble vision, with discipline and intent, you can go far farther to overcoming it than you can imagine. And that's the principle upon which you should predicate your behavior. And I think that one of the things that's really nice about being a clinical psychologist is that this isn't just guesswork. Like, one of the things, we know two things in clinical psychology. One is truthful conversations redeem people. Because if you come to a clinical psychologist whose worth is salt, you have a truthful conversation. The conversation is, well, here's what's wrong with my life, and here's what caused it. Maybe it takes a year to have that conversation, and both of the participants are doing everything they can to lay it out properly. Here's how it might be fixed. Here's what a beneficial future might look like. And so it's a completely honest conversation if it's working well. And all that's happening in the conversation is that the two people involved are trying to make things better. That's the goal. Let's see if we can have a conversation that will make things better. Okay, so we know that works. It does make things better. And then another thing we know is that, well, let's say there's a bunch of things that you're afraid of that are in your way. So you have some vision about who you want to be. Maybe you have to, you want to be successful in your career, so you have to learn to talk in front of a group. It's like, okay, well, you're afraid of that. It's like, no wonder you don't want to be humiliated. So, okay, so what do we do about that? Well, maybe we first get you to speak in front of one person and then 3 people, for 5 minutes and then for 10 minutes. Like, graduated exposure to what you're afraid of. Voluntary graduated exposure to what you're afraid of is curative. And that's true. It works. The documentation is in. It's how people learn. So to tell people that if you confront the world forthrightly, if you speak the truth, and you expose yourself courageously to those things that you're afraid of, that your life will improve, and so will the life of people around you. Like, as far as I'm concerned, that's as close to undeniable fact as we've got. And it also dovetails nicely with the underlying archetypal stories, the heroic stories. It's like, go out there, find the dragon, confront it. It's a dragon, it might eat you, it's dangerous. But it's worse to cower at home and wait for it to come and devour you. Go out there, confront it, get the gold, share it with the community. It's like, yeah, it's the oldest story of mankind.
I think one of the factors in the resistance to these ideas of discipline and of taking responsibility for yourself, and of a lot of the things that you've been saying in regards to, all the things that we discussed earlier, is people recognizing that they're not doing that in their own lives, and they get upset, and instead of looking internally, they try to attack the thing that's upsetting them. They attack your message. They attack the philosophy behind it, rather than look internally and objectively and having some sort of introspective point of view where you go, okay, am I reacting to this because this resonates? Like I'm missing this aspect of my life? Is this guy, does this diminish me? Or is this guy pointing something out that I can benefit from? Very few people are willing to do that. Very few people are willing to take that critical moment to look at their own behavior and look at their own thought process and wonder if the actual adverse reaction they have to this person's message is because they know that they're wrong.
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons for that. One is, well, what makes you think that you're someone we should listen to?
Right.
It's like, hey,
Sure.
fair enough,
Right.
So you got to be poked a bunch to see if that's true. And then the next thing is, it's painful to understand how much of what you're doing isn't productive. So I'll give you an example. So I've done this a couple of times with classrooms full of students, usually when I'm lecturing about career development. Say, okay, how much time do you waste? So then I get the class to vote. How many of you waste 10 hours a day? It's like 10% of the kids will put up their hands. And it's interesting because I don't define what constitutes waste. I just ask the question. So they're diagnosing themselves, right? I'm not saying you're wasting 10 hours a day. I'm just asking. It's like, given your own attitude, how much time are you wasting? 10 hours a day. It's like 10% of the people put up their hands. Well, when you get to like 6 hours a day, 80% of the people put up their hands. So then we do the arithmetic. It's like, because I like doing arithmetic with people. People hate arithmetic, but I like doing it. It's like, okay, 6 hours a day. It's 42 hours a week. So let's call that a work week, 40 hours a week. So that's a work week. Let's say, what's your time worth? You're a university student. Well, it's certainly worth minimum wage, because obviously, but it's worth way more than that, because if you spend a productive hour when you're 20, then you gain the benefits of that hour for the rest of your life. So there's the compounding effect of time spent when you're young. So I say, well, let's assume your time's worth $50 an hour, which I think is an underestimate, but whatever. Let's call it 50. We could call it 25, but we'll call it 50. If that's $2,000 a week you're wasting. It's $100,000 a year. It's like, how much better would your life be if you weren't wasting $100,000 a year? It's like, what is that over 40 years? $4 million. It's like, you're rich. You don't even know it. Quit wasting time. By your own definition. It's like people shake their heads. Like, oh, I never thought about it that way. It's like, yeah, think about it that way. Don't waste your damn life. And then you think, well, why would people be resistant to that message? It's like, well, you really want to wake up and figure out that you're wasting half your life? And, when people do that kind of wasting, they actually hate it. And I've had lots of people come to my clinical practice who were chronic procrastinators. And so they're watching YouTube videos, say, but not ones that are good for them, although sometimes they will do that, but just browsing in that kind of mindless way that you do when you're not paying attention and you're trying to kill time. And people doing that, they feel bad, they get depressed, they feel anxious, they can't get away from it, they feel kind of quasi-addicted.
That's what they're saying about social media now. It's a huge issue with young kids. Absolutely.
But there's this feeling of kind of internal rot and corruption that goes along with it. It's like, yeah, well, you're wasting your life. It's like, so it's painful. It's painful to recognize that. Then it's painful to think, oh my God, look how undisciplined I am. I don't know anything. I can't use a schedule. I can't stick to a calendar. I don't have any aims. I don't know anything about the world, right? And maybe there's a part of me that's bitter because I haven't got everything already, and I'd just like to say, to hell with it. That's the recognition of the Jungian shadow. It's like, that's what makes you vicious and untrustworthy. All of that. No one wants to look at that. And no bloody wonder. But hey, the alternative is worse. So
The problem is you say, like, just saying you stop wasting your life. Like, I think that's not enough. I think this is one of the reasons why a book like this is so important. Like, the idea of discipline in most people's eyes is like, if you're not a disciplined person, it's uncomfortable. It's going to be painful. It's frustrating. You have to force yourself into these things. It's a muscle. It's a muscle that has to be developed. And these patterns have to be developed in your own mindset.
incrementally.
Yes.